And welcome to another edition of Haunted Hotels. My name is Sam Baltrusis, and I'm an author and journalist. Joining me are my good friends, Erin and Mike Taylor. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about when we first met in Gettysburg, and when you guys first we were at the Farnsworth House in Gettysburg, and I walk in my suit. What were your first impressions of me when I walked in?
Well, I would definitely say from our side of the house is you're definitely dressed to the nines. I'm pretty sure I was t-shirt and jeans at the time because we just finished driving from somewhere in the Midwest.
Indiana.
So that was a long day of driving, so we took it easy. But yeah, you were dressed up pretty sharp. You were letting us know what you had going on. And I'm pretty sure there was a mishap with some salad dressing, but you were not the target, so you're good.
And I have to say, so I walk in, so I'm good friends with Richard Estep, and so are you guys. So it was just really great to meet the group that he works with. And I have to say that adventure in Gettysburg and then into Fort Mifflin was one of my favorites of last year. So that was just a wonderful experience. And I think what was really great about it, in addition to the ghost and the exploration, was just the friendships and the laughter and the fun that we had.
Absolutely, I can agree. I mean, looking back, that was 10 nights that we were on the trip where towards the end, I was more excited by sleep than I was anything paranormal. I was actually excited when nothing was happening so I could go to sleep. But yeah, absolutely. When we met up about that halfway through, where the 2 nights we were in Gettysburg and then moving on, where more of my memories are about the laughter. They're about how much fun it was. And sure, there's a couple things in there that were, ooh, that was cool. What was that? But it was more the para-unity that really took place.
And the sound carrying.
So how did you two get involved with the paranormal, and specifically, how did you get involved with working with Richard Estep and his group, working on his books?
I'll take that lead.
Go for it.
So he and I actually met with doing this. I'd always had a fascination with the paranormal. It wasn't until 2013 and my cousin died, and my mom Susan, who you met the other night at the Plaza, she was like, "Hey, you should go join a group." I'm like, "Well, that's silly. Just those are like for TV stars, right?" I didn't know any better. Found a local team, and they were, open to working with me. That's when he came in through another member. We'll just say the conflict of opinions and not for podcast air. Time for that later. We formed Shy Mountain Paranormal, and so that group of it that formed in 2014. And we went through a whole lot of changes as a group, and I would say definitely in the last year we've come a lot stronger.
So was it 2015 or 16 when we were up at the Atlas?
Up at the Atlas was 2016.
So in 2016, my first introduction to Richard was a very horrible, is the best way of putting it, public event. So there's technical issues left and right. We had some other teams that we were butting heads with at the time. But I kind of did this high-pitched, blood-curdling scream in the dark. Some lady almost fell off the stage, and Richard was very upset with me. This is his first impression of me, mind you. Then we get to go to Asylum over some miscommunication, and I was not very thrilled to hear that the only thing that Richard remembered about me was scaring some lady off the stage. So there was a little bit of redemption on my part for my practical jokes.
And I had only done one investigation with Richard at that point. A former member and I were invited to go out to Fox Hollow Farm in Indiana, where Richard was writing the whole Terror at Fox Hollow Farm. Fantastic serial killer. I mean, I say that comorbidly as like,
That would be the child.
There we do have a child in the background just for listeners. But yeah, so getting to go out there and investigate, I was still trying to earn my keep basically with him as well. Asylum 49 came along. And it's like, hey, can my boyfriend come along? Oh, the guy who made that poor girl almost fall off stage. I promise he'll be good. I think at the end of that trip, there was a budding bromance.
That's awesome. And like my experience with Richard actually is kind of similar because I was putting on an event in Massachusetts called Mass Paracon, and I invited Richard. I fan of his books, and we had tables next to each other at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, and I'm like, Richard, why don't you join us at our event in Lenox, Massachusetts? So I get a carriage house for me, myself, for me, Richard, and then our friend James Anito, and the carriage house turned out to be a carriage room. So we were like crammed in this small room that was supposedly like a huge house.
This was you and Richard.
So it ended up being like it was a nightmare for the first night, but we actually had a blast. We talked the whole weekend. It was just a wonderful experience. And since then, we've been really good friends. And what I really like working with Richard is because he has such a different approach than I do when it comes to the paranormal. He's very much like by the book, more like a journalist, where he kind of goes from like step to step, possibly debunks things that are happening, which is how you should do an investigation. I'm definitely more like a woo-woo investigator. I'm like doing my crystal shield of protection, which, by the way, as Mike pointed out to me in Gettysburg, is the vagina symbol in American Sign Language. I've used that. I've told that story so many times at different events, and everyone starts cracking up because
It brings smiles.
I do this crystal shield of protection, and I do it like a triangle with my hands, not even knowing. Someone taught it to me. Actually, a high priestess witch taught it to me, and it actually works. But what happens is the way I was kind of interpreting it actually was very offensive to people who are use American Sign Language and know American Sign Language.
But that's also going to be different, with culture too. I mean, you think about like, this is okay, this is a-hole. So, I mean, you're just being wary on any sort of.
Most of the
cultural
time,
level.
it's not so much offensive. It's more of, do they know what they're saying? Most of the time, they know. No, they don't.
No, yeah, and what's funny? So I walk into the Gettysburg investigation. We were at the Farnsworth House, and I will never forget this. We were in the basement of the Farnsworth House, and I do my crystal shield of protection. You guys were sitting on the benches after taking a really long journey already to get to Gettysburg. So you guys were tired, and you were like, Erin was like passed out on the bench.
Oh, I was actually really, really sick.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, dinner did not agree with me. And so I was in this like delusional, like, is this even happening? And so I just kind of let you all unfold in front of my eyes.
I got the two nudges. Are we seeing the same thing right now, or is this a food-induced hallucination? We weren't sure, but we both were seeing it.
I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I did. It's like, cool. This is something.
Not what we expected, but a pleasant surprise.
But it was. No, like I said, I mean, it wasn't anything that we found offensive. More or less him nudging me going, vagina.
So we were down in the basement at the Farnsworth House, and what was your take on that haunted hotel? Because it's one of the most popular haunted hotels in the country because it's in Gettysburg. I definitely think there's activity there, and I think in the basement by alone has a lot of activity. What was your take on what was going on at the Farnsworth House?
It might have been because I was really tired. I found it very, very beautiful. Richard makes fun of me because I went into her Baumeister's house at Foxhole Farm, and I was like, I'm like, wow, this place is beautiful. Okay, a serial killer lived here.
Kitchen.
Right. I love aesthetics. I love architecture. So the whole building was very pleasing to the eye, especially in the history. But as far as any sort of feelings, like I said, I was really sick the night that we were there. And so I was more than happy to go to bed. I think I was more frightened by our claw tub that was held up on bricks that you get in and you think it's going to collapse through the ceiling.
Into the dining room below.
But I do know when we went, we did go down to the basement. Oh no, because we did the Farnsworth the fourth night.
We did it a couple of times.
Yeah. So we stayed there the first night and then we went back. Sorry, again, that whole trip was a blur. But we went back. That's when I was sick. The first night I was just tired. I know down in the basement, some other people were having experiences like cigarette smoke. Our friend Sarah had an experience down there. There was the supposed haunted mirror from Kindred Spirits. Pretty mirror. But I would say if there was anything down there, it didn't care about me. You had an experience though when we stayed there.
I had a few. So on the first night that we stayed there, and we seem to get activity when we're going to bed, strangely enough. Erin at this point is passed out. And then you just get a strong knock at the door, kind of like if I were to go and knock on the door, there's a clear, distinct bang compared to if Erin were to knock on the door. Get up, check it. There's no one in that hallway. And that's a long stairwell that goes down, kind of like the one we have here at our house that goes upstairs. You get a clear view both sides. And unless you're the Flash, you're not going to beat that time to clear. And the time that I got up and checked out the door, there's no one there. So that was pretty cool. When we were downstairs doing Estes, I did have the multiple different voices and tones come through that were very clear and distinct, where in a lot of locations I haven't experienced that. Like we were talking before, Sarah, Erin, a few other people, when they do Estes, they seem to get so much better communications than I do. And it was one of our more active. We were over at the orphanage a few nights prior, and we really didn't have anything, at least on my side with the Estes method. So it was very interesting to see how things were coming through. And even as Richard put in the book, because he chronicalized everything we did, there was stuff that he put in there that I completely forgot happened because it happened so rapid fire, so quick. So the whole place was interesting. It was hopping, especially the 2 nights that we got to experience out there. And that attic is one heck of a place to get to investigate. When there's no air.
Side note, our dryer just went off just for background noise.
Yeah, I'm just like, are you guys doing like is that a REM pod in the background or something?
It would be more interesting if it was the REM pod.
It's the day-to-day of a normal paranormal, investigator daily life.
So with the Farnsworth House and looking back at it, so I know that a lot of people had experiences, and I will say that the biggest thing for me experience was in the basement. I felt like my shirt was tugged, and there was the whole back. There's a child spirit that supposedly died in a tragic accident outside and what are your thoughts on him and even the spirits of the Farnsworth House? I'm kind of in a school that a lot of times the energy that we encounter out in the field, maybe what we know as thought forms, or you tell a story over and over and over again, and it sometimes creates a ghost or creates something that mimics a child or mimics an entity that like that knocks on the door, like a poltergeist activity. What do you think is really going on at the Farnsworth House?
I mean, you got to think. I mean, a lot of people died in that area, where the story of Jeremy is definitely a sad one. We're getting hit out front and then coming inside. And, his dad is said to be haunting the hotel as well. Like you said, too, are those just stories? Where is any of the validity? I mean, I'm torn when it comes into history, where I love stories, but at the same time, I'm brokenhearted when I find out that they didn't really happen. And so whether, that is Jeremy or whoever, who could it be another little boy who maybe says, I can be Jeremy because someone's paying attention to me.
Yeah. I'm actually finding a lot in my studies, or like just kind of my research when it comes to haunted hotels. I worked at a haunted hotel in Salem and had an experience with a man wearing a hat, but also a woman that's known as the lady in the blue dress. And you know, we know for a fact that we've seen photos of what this entity looked like, and she's been reported by multiple people, but there's definitely no historical backstory to back her up. Like she doesn't, like in the history book, she doesn't exist. She's kind of been created on tours. And
Mhm.
I'm like, with her specifically, I'm like, did we create her? Did we sort of like make a thought form or a tulpa by telling this fake story over and over again? And I've seen it at multiple locations, including the inn that I work at now, Concord's Colonial Inn, in Massachusetts. And there's this whole backstory of a doctor, Dr. Thomas Mino, who supposedly worked during the American Revolution. He had a makeshift hospital during the Battle of Concord in Lexington. And two of the rooms were where he performed surgeries and amputations. And the bottom room was where he kept the bodies in a morgue. And guess what? He wasn't there during the American Revolution, like during the Battle of Concord and Lexington. So this is going to be my new book that I'm working on now. So these kinds of like stories, but we have seen soldiers with wounds in that room, in that area. And are we creating these spirits or these ghosts?
Well, and here's another thought to kind of think about as well. In science, you have the rule of conservation of mass and energy. Energy and matter just they don't disappear; they take different shape and they change. A lot of the residual energies that we run into is maybe it's an imprinting on the Earth and the time and space that we're at. But the other thing is, look at the living and how we deal with them as well. If you give someone an in, they will find a way to take that in to get into your personal life and manipulate that as they wish. So when we create the tulpas or thought forms, we're also creating that in that some other energy form could potentially walk into because you gave them that in to your personal
Mhm.
bubble. A lot of the times when we have our defenses up and we don't want to interact with things, it's the thing that's familiar that gets through those defenses. And that's when we start seeing weird and unexplainable stuff that happens. So if you've created that tulpa where you tell that story and someone goes, you know what, I can relate to that, that creates that hole in that defense, which then allows that to be infiltrated to a degree. Those are all come off as very strong and harsh words, but it's kind of the best explanation that I have for something like that. We give something familiarity and it allows it into our personal space. And then we seem to have more interactions happen.
I like that. I think that it's kind of all in the same school, but there's different approaches to how it happens. Whether or not, like, is it a disembodied soul? Is it something inhuman? Is it something interdimensional? Like, I don't know, and I kind of go back and forth myself. Or is it sort of like psychokinesis, where someone, I will say that when I go to a location, things do happen. Am I like a generator? Do I generate energy around me somehow, and like say me and someone else together could
Mhm.
create something? I'm not sure what's going on, but I will say that it's fun, and it's fun to kind of explore and try to communicate with these spirits and trying to find answers. So and it's fun to have to also to investigate with people that have a different point of view when it comes to the paranormal. I think if I work with just people like myself, the people are like that are doing the crystal shield of protection out of the field and like woo 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 with their dowsing rods, it wouldn't be as fun. And I like having that more of a scientific um, approach with the friends that I work with, like Richard, like you two, like Sarah Streamer. I think that you guys have it's a nice melding of different points of
Mhm.
view and different approaches to the paranormal.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, I was brought up, with like television ghost hunters with the K2, and I love watching the old episodes where, the new ones, they don't even touch the K2 anymore because there are so many other gadgets. But guess what? When I was going to be a ghost hunter, my first piece of equipment was a K2. But now we've got so many others. We've got the REM, we have the mill, we have a REM mill, voice recorders. I have a new EMF cat you had referred me to, and she is fantastic. I can't wait for you to meet her. Yes, she's a her. Her name's Mrs. Buttons.
Oh,
And
really? Mrs. Buttons.
we have Spike, the dinosaur, that if Richard is watching this, he will totally deny, but he loves Spike the dinosaur. He's a very, very loud, obnoxious, motion activated dinosaur. Can't miss him. But, and that's the thing too, is like we go with the clairvoyance, we go with the empath, because I don't like saying that like I'm like a certain type of sensitive or not, but every now and then something picks up. I think that's why I'm in the field of mental health. I kind of channeled it somewhere else. But you go with the woo-woo stuff, you go with the science, and if you can put stuff together and it's making something, that is way more awesome than I got a K2 hit and that must be a ghost. Or, you know, you get a personal experience, that's awesome, but where's the backup? And
I'll be honest, we've had more recently within the last year and a half. We've had more better hits with things that we can explain on our cell phones using memo pads and just recording what's going on. It's like we're having conversations that have nothing to do with the investigation at that point in time. And you get a clear as day whistle. Or, you know, before we were going to talk with you, we had 2 really hard audio distortions on our phones that were like, that doesn't make any sense. Over the weekend, we were at the hotel, same place. We're out at the Plaza. And it also happened at Castañeda.
oh, Brittany's phone, yes.
So our other investigator with us, she has a Samsung phone, and it has the auditory snap function going. So pretty much you say cheese, shoot, and there's like 2 other words to it. It'll go from the video you're in and just take a picture, and it'll display an icon at the top of your screen. We went back and played it and looked at the words that were being said at the time. None of those words were being said, but yet the phone is taking photos. And of course, what's a good investigation without taking a picture of someone's butt or their crotch when your phone's not even meant to? So it's like, all right, cool. We're keeping the tradition at every location we go to. Somehow that photo happens. Granted, we don't publish them because that would be very embarrassing, mostly for me. But hey, you know, I like our technology, but the best part is when I can't explain it. And when I can't explain it and you pick up something on your side and it comes together, that's like the perfect storm of awesome, because it doesn't happen very frequently. Most of the time, we can explain it. When we can't, that's when I get excited.
So when you were alluding to 2 hotels that you both visited this past weekend in Las Vegas, New Mexico, the Plaza Hotel, and I was able to do a video walkthrough with you guys throughout the hotel. And I have to say, kind of like what you were saying before, Erin, about I'm like, all I could think of was like, God, this is beautiful. This is so beautiful. I don't care about the ghosts are interesting, but it was such a you can feel the history so far away, even over the live video chat. And so tell us a little bit about your experience there. I know that Erin, that you remember you went there before when you were younger, and you come back to kind of revisit something from your childhood, right?
Yes. So my mother, while I was growing up, was really big into archaeology. And so I would spend plenty of summers. My birthday is at the end of May, so a lot of like Memorial Day weekends, encampments, going around like the Colorado area. And we happened to go down to a couple places near Las Vegas, such like Fort Union and like the Pecos National Monument for the Anasazi Indians. But we did a lunch tour in Las Vegas, and I was I know I was roughly in middle school during all of these, maybe late elementary. I remember having some sort of lunch there, and there was a white gazebo in the plaza. And then I remember there was a plaque that said Billy the Kid died there. Now, being, older and wiser, I know that didn't happen, but I had to almost go back and figure that out. But I will totally admit the Ghost Adventures episode of them investigating the Castañeda and the Plaza intrigued me. I do have my cat here for any listeners, but he's
I thought it was Mrs. Buttons for a second. It's actually
No.
your
That
cat.
investigation would probably make me more concerned hearing a cat meow like that.
Yeah. No, Mrs. Buttons doesn't meow. She beeps loudly. But so the Ghost Adventures episode, is from like 2015. And when, and I kept wanting to go back to New Mexico and trying to figure out how I could, excuse me, I could get Mike down to New Mexico. And usually if he's got his drone or he's just with me, he's whatever. And that's how I entice him into ghost hunting. And that's actually how we've gotten some like previous paranormal activity where he's just nonchalant, like he said, the whistle. But COVID hit and it made things really, really hard. And with January, we were supposed to go to a couple locations and Omicron was hitting pretty hard. We got sick and it was just, let's stay local to home. It's like I put a message out to my team. Hey, who wants to go to Las Vegas?
Not that Vegas.
No,
Other Vegas.
I would rather go here. Don't get me not a big fan of other Vegas. But so my mom is part of the team, Susan, and our other team member, Brittany, were like, heck yeah, let's go. And so we booked rooms for one night each to go down and check out.
And just to reiterate, so this is in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and I actually didn't even know that there was another Las Vegas.
So this was actually like the bigger Las Vegas. It was on the railroad. The hotels were actually built by the railroad companies in order to be able to bring people in and have, like the Castañeda was actually one of the first Harvey houses where Fred Harvey would have Harvey Girls. There was a movie with Judy Garland, which I didn't realize I'm going to have to watch, but he basically is to credit for tourism, going up and down the railroad and go have a stay somewhere and eat at a really good location. And this was a booming Southwest town. There's, especially in the Plaza, there was Billy the Kid. There were Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday actually owned a saloon in Las Vegas until his buddy Wyatt Earp said, hey, you want to come to Tombstone? So he went over there. But
and so the hotel that I walked through was the Plaza Hotel, and it was a very looked like late 1800s it was built. Like, what's the whole the history of that location, if you remember?
I believe it was 1882. Yes, that actually makes sense because it's 140 years old. Now that building was built by a gentleman and Byron T. Mills. Basically, he lived, breathed that hotel. The Ilfords, realizing how popular that the plaza was, they purchased the land next door and they built basically what is considered like the Southwest, the Southwest first department store. And when the hotel was renovated back in 2006, they actually ended up taking the Ilford building, which is next door, and adding that onto an addition. So where we slept was in the new addition, but where we investigated was the old. Mr. Mills did die in that hotel. He died in room 310, and the rumors remain that he never left.
Brittany was in 209 because the whole third floor was closed off to access. I was up there exploringly, tried to recreate it. We couldn't, but she was getting somebody walking heavily above her, and that entire wing is shut down. So I went up there. She was in her room, and me being a heavy gentleman, I stomp my feet. Typically, unless it's concrete, you get a vibration out of it. You can hear it. She could not hear me walking around up there at all. So, I mean, that was one of those things where, there's reports of him never leaving. And that's kind of an experience that we had that credits that. It goes back to what you were saying before. Is that an actual spirit or is that a thought form because it's been talked about so much? At this point, we're not sure.
Yeah, and what I was getting also, when you guys were walking through, I was getting kind of all this Wild West type of activity, kind of like a brothel, gun, people with guns and shooting and possibly a murder. However, it turns out this location also is a very popular location for television and film. So a lot of the stuff that I was picking up seemed to be residual in nature. But I was like, after kind of like looking a little bit into the backstory of this hotel, I'm like, maybe I was picking up on like a film shoot or like a TV shoot instead of actual real people doing all the stuff that I was seeing.
Like you're bringing up, we had Wyoming come across, and I kid you, I kid you not, the first placard when you walk in to your left is talking about a Western show based in Wyoming that was filmed here, Longmire. So it was one of those things. It's like, that is definitely one hell of a coincidence for sure, because it's like, we're not in Wyoming, we're in New Mexico, for crying out loud. How do we have this tie? Which opens up the realm of possibility and understanding, going, okay, now we're picking up residential imprints in our area off of a TV set. But you think about it, a lot of energy goes into those. There's a lot of people to coordinate. It's not just the actor on TV, it's the hundreds of people that go into it. You put that much energy into a place, you're going to create something.
And it kind of like, it was actually kind of fascinating to me. I'm like, this is the first time where I'm like, hey, you know, this is very possible that there may be some sort of psychic imprint at that hotel based on fictional things that happen there, and it just kind of opened up a whole. I'm like, well, maybe, and that maybe that's the explanation for other locations as well. So so thank you for like doing that walkthrough. And not only is it beautiful, but it has a really like a really inviting vibe to it. Like it makes me want to go and visit after just walking through that hotel.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you happened to say, "Hey, I want to go there." I'm like, "Sam, you want a tour?" You know, and honestly, I mean, I would, you know, I will be lying if I said I wasn't hoping for some sort of like reading, but I wasn't going to sit there and go, "Hey, here, do your woo-woo stuff," right? No, it was more of, "Hey, you're, as a friend, you want to see this place, I don't mind, and if you happen to pick up anything," and you were just like, "Boom, boom, boom, here we go." Now we didn't really get anything with the female, just so you know, but I guess you haven't. I just realized that you haven't mentioned her yet, but there is one occurrence that happened upstairs that I wanted to share after I did get off with you in front of Mr. Mill's room. So we focused a lot more of our time up there just because we didn't want to disrupt other guests. The whole third floor was not booked at all.
It was closed privately for us. It was awesome. Totally sarcastic.
It was like the best situation that we could have asked for, but there was ice in my background. But so I have my millimeter with the REM and our investigator Brittany, and we'd kicked Mike out, just assuming that if any of these ladies didn't want anything to deal with him, so he left. And that's when Brittany's phone started going off. We're trying to investigate that. He comes back, and my millimeter, which is doing absolutely nothing up until then, starts fluctuating. Not the actual REM, no beeps, nothing like that, but the mill is going up, down number, which of course, normally that's because something electrical is in it. And I mean, it is jumping, Sam. I mean, it is going
electrifying. But...
yeah, I mean, it's going from like 0.4 to 25.0, and it's sitting in the middle of a hallway. So yes, but I'm telling a story. So I asked, I'm like, okay, well, how high could you get it? And it fluctuated a little bit more, and it jumped up to 50.0, and then it went back down, and it only beeped twice. After that, we got nothing else. So I almost wonder how much it mustered energy for that, but I have never seen that activity happen.
And the rest of the night was quiet after that.
Yeah.
So also what I was getting, I picked up like I was using my dowsing rods at one point, and Erin, I know that you did like an EVP session where you were recording what I was saying, and there was a part where there was potentially like a sort of an EVP anomaly happening while during the recording, or it could have been something explainable like my dowsing rods kind of clinking together. It could have been that as well. But I personally think that there was stuff that I was picking up on that may or may not have actually happened there. It may have happened in the TV shows or movies. And also too, I kept getting a murder suicide, and it turns out it wasn't at the Plaza. It was actually at the hotel you were visiting the following night, which is the Castañeda.
I will say though, if your dowsing rods are giving us 3 syllables, those are some impressive rods.
Well, there was the clicking Sam was talking about when we were going over the review. And Brittany said that those clacks were all through the film. So she says that that is interference from just the internet and doing the video.
Okay.
So your dowsing rods never made any noise. We just hear those clacks. Now, we do have the 3 syllables underneath when you're saying that I should talk to the woman on the 2nd floor. And we don't know what, there's a guess of what is being said. But you know how guesses are always so subjective, because of course it can say, I like pie, but it's, someone's going to listen to it and say, it wants to beat me up.
Right.
So,
or it's a demon, as we see a lot in these TV shows. It's a demon.
Yes. And then there was another one with soon after with a sigh. And that one was very, very deliberate.
Very masculine, and I'm the only guy there who was not sighing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what I was, after hearing the EVPs, if I see I was interpreting it, and I'm horrible at interpreting EVPs, by the way, but I was getting that there was a gentleman, and it's probably the original owner, when you were trying to talk to the woman, I was getting that he was saying she's deceased. And it's almost like he's controlling like what's going on, even with the people that have passed at that hotel. So I was getting a really controlling man, trying to control the women that may or may not still be at that hotel with him. So I don't necessarily, I don't view him as a bad person. I just kind of view him as sort of a man from a different time.
He liked being in control. It's just
Right.
not like a jerk about it, but I mean, it sounded like things were done his way, and that was just what everyone knew.
Now, the hotel the following night, what did you guys, anything from that other hotel with the murder-suicide?
So I already gave a little bit of the history on the Castañeda. I feel like it was way more for someone who wants to go have a fantastic night of sleep. Because I will tell you, Mike and I slept terribly at the Plaza, not because of ghosts. We had we had no heat in our room.
And it's snowing.
And it snowed that night. We are literally, he's in his coat and hat and all sorts of bundled up. Castañeda was like the best sleep that I'd had in a long time. And the only thing is that our evening manager reception, he was actually a pretty cool guy, and he took us under. He's like, hey, well, yeah, you want to see this stuff? And gave us a behind the scenes tour because this is 16 rooms and they're pretty booked. So we can't really do any investigating upstairs. We're like, okay, let's go downstairs.
Sound travels
really
well,
immensely. So we go, he takes us into the bar where the murder suicide happened, where the staff member killed his wife and then killed himself. Nothing that we were able to get. He then took us to there's a first floor that they're renovating, but you have to go through the kitchen to get to this hallway. So they're trying to figure out how not to have guests go through the kitchen to where they're going. Apparently the people renovating in there had made some claims that things happened.
Apparently the basement on that side of the hotel is really creepy. Couldn't get in there because maintenance had the code.
Yeah, it looked creepy, but
a lot of the info we got from people who were working there was basically, I feel like I'm constantly being watched. And that was the main thing. that was the takeaway over and over is I feel like I'm being watched. I feel like I'm being watched. Nothing's flying, nothing's crashing. Even on the second floor, you can explain footsteps because the penthouse floor, which you need a key to get to, is like plywood laid down. So every footstep's going to radiate through that hallway. I mean, everything carries there. So I think Erin's motto for that place was, if you want to sleep somewhere that has history but not get messed with by ghosts, Castañeda is the place to go.
Yeah, that where we did have the phone thing happen. Brittany had her phone out where we were able to go down into the other basement, the bar's basement. And it kind of, this was my woo-woo maybe, but I mean, I had to ask, like, okay, were there tunnels? Like, I'm getting something. And maybe that was also just subjective because there's old walls and it looked like they'd been filled up. But, you know, during Prohibition times, yeah, they were sneaking stuff all around. But yeah, Brittany's camera did the sudden taking pictures by itself, and we went back, reviewed audio, and there was nothing that could have triggered those.
That should have triggered it.
That should have triggered, yeah.
Yeah, I was also getting to, even at the other hotel when we did the walkthrough, that there was something below, like a tunnel, and you know, you guys did go in the basement, but I felt like there was something even lower than that was like beneath the building. And I think that was very common. It's common, I know, in New England, especially during the Prohibition era, for people to smuggle in, you know, goods in those tunnels, or it was also like sometimes to connect locations if it was either too hot or too cold. And then people, of course, take those tunnels and like did nefarious things in them. So, but if there's ever a tunnel, like that's one of those locations that I love that. I love, like, if there's like a hidden tunnel at a haunted hotel, I love going in the hidden tunnel.
I love the Atlas.
Yeah, I also, like, I love a lot of the West Coast locations. You guys are based in Colorado, and I was able to go to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, and I have to say, it wasn't nowhere near as haunted as I was expecting based on The Shining and what I've heard. It was a different kind of haunting. But the part that I loved the most of the Stanley Hotel was that there was an area beneath where you can actually go in like a little tunnel, and there was like quartz or some like limestone or some kind of area. And to me, like that is like the what's below can also serve as like a amplifier or almost like a recording of hauntings. And so I really find the Colorado really interesting. And also this is also the case in New England, where the land somehow absorbs the ghosts.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, you got the old, you know, with New England, you definitely have the history, especially with settlers coming over. I mean, I think a lot of, like, over here, Colorado is a lot of Indian land, where that also can definitely contribute to the energies. You know, actually, my first paranormal experience was on a reservation, so I highly believe that.
And, you know, kind of looking at all the hotels on, because you guys are in sort of like Las Vegas, New Mexico is sort of like the Wild West, and you have all the Wild West hotels. Is there a hotel on the West Coast, a room with a boo, that you would love to visit that you haven't visited yet?
A room with a
haven't visited.
Oh, what is the on Coronado Island? I'm going way west. The Dell. But I think I might have that one I had visited when I was 18 with my best friend. And that one had a suicide where, you know, apparently with a woman haunts. I mean, our whole thing is like, have ghosts will travel. And of course, you know, I'm working on my book, Sleeping in Haunted Locations, titled to be something. But Roosevelt Hotel.
Oh, yeah. I have never I sign up to go there and something happens. I don't know what's going on. Like I was supposed to go to the Roosevelt Hotel in LA multiple times, and something always comes up, like you like COVID, or like, you know, like something always kind of gets in the way of it. But it's one of those locations that I really want to visit.
All right, Sam, let's do it.
Let's do it. And I will definitely do my crystal shield of protection. while we're while we're out there. And speaking of protection, what do you two do for protection? Like, do you do like kind of woo woo stuff, or do you kind of just go in and kind of like hope for the best that nothing really attaches to you?
I always feel like I get chastised for it, but it's like I walk in, it's more of that building that confidence, just like you would like going into a room where there might be tough people or whatever, and having not showing that vulnerability is probably why nothing really ever happens to me. But you and I talked about like even like Hinsdale, where I don't want to walk in too cocky to a place where something could take that as a challenge. So that might be something where I'd ask, it's like, okay, go ahead and send some of your crystal shield over. At the end, doing some sort of boundary of, you have to stay here. You can't come home. Sure, I know that they can come home. Monroe House, I had something follow me back to the hotel. And that was even Lisa Crick giving me, like dabbing me with some holy water. So, I mean,
So it goes back to, we tend to close out any of the investigations that give us that hair standing on end feeling. We do that closing out. Say, hey, we're heading out. You stay here. You don't have permission to come with us. All that fun stuff. Whenever we work with people or people who are concerned about attachments or paranormal anything, a lot of it boils down to what's your faith, what's your belief system. If you believe strongly in it, it'll work for you. You can't take a pagan ritual, give it to a Christian and go, hey, this will work for you, because they don't believe in it. Faith is really what powers a lot of things, and knowing what that faith is and knowing what those rituals are works in it. Doing a lot of different studies, there's different things from many different cultures that can be done. And it's just knowing what your faith is, where it's at, and who you're working with.
I actually because I've worked in Salem a lot. I do a lot of pagan type things that, well, not even knowing that I'm doing it. And another thing that I picked up recently, and we'll because we're planning on going to the Hinsdale House with Richard and the group coming up in March, and then going to the Rochester Winter Parafest later in March. But something that my friend April, who's a fellow psychic, she suggested doing like black salt, putting it outside of the location, and then as you walk out, you step in the salt, and you kind of do like release all the negativity in that salt. And so I'm gonna try different things at the Hinsdale House for us, just to see what we can to see if it works.
So for you, what I would recommend, and this comes from Wiccan and Pagan, is, and I'll have to shoot you the symbol, but if you take the symbol, put it on a stone, and bathe it under the 3 nights of the full moon in water. Possible to freeze this time of year. I have done that before too, so you have to wait for that to thaw out. But the energy from the moon charges the rune on the stone, and you keep that stone on you. Many people out here, that has worked for them. The locations that we do our paranormal experiences at, we have a lot of the actors during haunt season that are performing there, and they're worried about getting poked, scratched. I mean, seriously scratched. We've had people that catch that glimpse of the shadow of the corner of their eye, and those runes made it so they were able to get through that haunt season. And if there's at any point where they're no longer working again, you just recharge them under the full moon, and you get the 3 nights again.
Side note, isn't it working tonight?
I like that. And I'm also big. So in addition to the crystal shield, I use selenite harmonizers as well, just for grounding. And I think that whatever works for you. And a lot of times it's changing. It's not something may have worked for you a couple of years, and then it just doesn't work for you anymore. And I like the idea of trying different things as you go along, just to kind of pick up new techniques. And I find that also, like, I find it works for me, and that I pass it on to people that reach out to me, because I get reached out to by a lot of people who are like, Sam, I have a similar situation going on. What should I do? And I'll just give them pointers when it comes to what to do when you're dealing with something. A lot of times, I think like, it may be in their heads. It's not necessarily something that they should be worried about. But I also think that you have to kind of like just basically believe what they're saying, and just kind of like work with them, and hopefully give them some tools to make for them to be less afraid.
And actually, yeah, you reminded me of sage and smudging. that when we left Sally house, we went over there the night and over Thanksgiving, we smudged the following morning.
Yeah, we took a bowl with sage, burned the sage, and got a nice solid plume and bathed in it. There's been a few houses that we've worked on in the past where they were having a lot of activity, and we went through it the sage. Granted, we had to definitely air out the house afterwards because I probably set off a lot of smoke detectors with that much sage.
Well, you got to let the demons out.
But it worked. You know, things reported from them.
Mm-hmm.
It went really well for them. So again, being open to those different things, and a lot of it has to do with the willingness. If you're not willing for something to work, it's never going to work.
And when we went to in Gettysburg, we then went to Fort Mifflin, and you're writing a book, Erin, about like the beds. Like I have to say, like that was the most uncomfortable overnight of my career, because we were like, I was sleeping on this wooden plank, and you guys were next, like near on the in the same bunker, and it was so uncomfortable. But what I did do is I did Palo Santo. So when I went outside, I lit the Palo Santo because I have to say, like, that experience at Fort Mifflin was actually pretty active for me, even though I remember us being out in like one of the areas and just sitting there for like an hour and nothing happened. But I go somewhere else, like I go to the casemates, and then I felt like I saw a shadow walk by. So I definitely tried different things, and I think the Palo Santo worked for me that night.
Well, it's awesome about like Fort Mifflin is that I was so hot and mosquitoes and buggy and tired. And yeah, you were curled up on your bunk. He was passed out by the time I came in. And that is when I had my paranormal experience.
Again, while we're sleeping.
Well, you were sleeping. And I guess, Sam, you said that you had heard this too, but I figured you both were sleeping. Well, door slammed. I thought it was maybe the other investigators who were still up. Then I heard, no, so that you flung up, and then I started hearing the footsteps and around. And
I kept waking up hearing the footsteps, and I'm thinking it's like Richard or somebody else walking in, and it was like a soldier. It was like someone like kind of keeping watch of what's going on, and I didn't sleep well at all. It was so unnerving, but it was also beautiful at the same time because it's Fort Mifflin. It's like one of my favorite locations. So I would do it again. I just would probably bring a mattress or something.
Got one for him still. Yeah, that was
foam roll.
That was totally where it's like I look up, there's no one there. I'm like, cool. Like I wasn't even whatever. It's just more of let me sleep. I had that the next night at Bel Air House where there was something walking around in my room and I could feel the vibrations, and I didn't even look around. It was by that time it was Mike was upstairs, Sarah, Richard, no, Randy, and everyone was dispersed in this house. I was alone in the room, but there was someone there, and I
was up in the attic. I was investigating in my sleep, so I have me sleep talking, investigating.
Too tired to really wake up though.
Yeah,
I was like, just don't do anything, let me sleep. And then the next night at Sally house, I fell asleep in the living room floor. Hence why I'm writing my book, because I can sleep in demonic houses apparently.
Yeah, so tell us something. I know that it's a work in progress, but are you going to kind of, I know that you're kind of like looking at the idea of sleeping at a haunted location and sort of like are you giving it like a rating system, like, 5 ghosts up or like 5 thumbs up for the sleeping accommodations?
No, not necessarily. And like I've said, it's yours and Richard's fault because I made a joke online about, hey, if I were to write a book, it would be about all these places I slept at because of all the crap that I got about Sally House. But hey, I did it. But it's like, all right, well, let me go ahead and start it. And so I started off with a house in Cripple Creek. We were up there in October, and by turn of event meant the owner wants nothing to do with ghost hunters. So it's very much like the Castañeda. He actually liked what I wrote. I sent him it and I said, hey, if you don't like it, then I won't do anything with it. He's like, nope, you represent the hotel lovely. I can't wait to see it. But basically it's going on to the premise of this hotel is haunted. I need to go sleep there. And can I actually, can I have a good night's stay? Will I have an experience? So like hospitality house, not really anything. I wrote about the McIntyre Villa in Atchison, Sally House. I'm writing about the Plaza and the Castañeda. Castañeda is going to be one where, beautiful, great sleep, really nothing. And then I've got, the others in the works, like, well, we have Victor Hotel coming up, and these are all in Colorado. Lumber Baron and Cindy Kaza had told me to go to. Crooks Patterson Mansion in Denver, that was on Portals to Hell. Before my birthday weekend, where we're going to be in Iowa for my 40th, and figure I'm going to go spend time, ghost hunting. My bachelorette party was at Monroe House, so it's only fitting.
Oh, wow.
It was the whole joke, and it made its way into the book. So,
well, the nice thing about what she's doing with the book is it's not just, hey, I'm going to a place and sleeping. She's actually pulling information on these places, finding out what happened here that could have potentially made this place haunted. What is not so much in the nitty gritty, whose secret britches are you going to find, but it's more of, here's why this place is theorized to be haunted, and here's what I experienced.
Here's the story, and what could you experience? Now, anyone could walk into somewhere, like we were saying before, like, who's going to be more sensitive and say, oh, this happened to me. Okay, this is just what's on mine. And I don't want it to be so much of like a Dear Diary, I slept here, but more of, here's this night that we went to, this is what we experienced, take it or leave it. And so far I've had great feedback, from the locations that I've reached out to. About 90%, 95% gave me, high fives, yes, do it, including like the places in Iowa. So Hinsdale's A-okay with me doing it. So very, very exciting for this whole project that I'm endeavoring, because I never thought. So I will put in there, this is, to Richard and Sam, this is all your fault. So
I love the idea. I love the idea that we were inspiration for this project. Anyone that tries to write a book, I support, especially someone that I'm friends with. I definitely support you on this journey of writing a book. And it's one of those things that it also gives you a motivation to visit some of these locations that you've wanted to revisit for years, like the Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And that's why I love doing it. That's why I love doing this podcast, Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis, because I like talking to people that know these haunted hotels and inns throughout the country, and it kind of gives me like a bucket list of locations that I want to visit.
Right. It's not so much like the Stanley that everyone knows, but then there's like the Plaza that are lesser known, and which is awesome too, because then not everyone and their mom is there.
Nice little hidden gems, because that's a lot of the places that we've noticed, the hotel wise, that we go and visit. Like we went and did the Grand Jerome. They get people who are like, oh, it's on a ghost TV show, and I'm gonna go run around with my K2 and get drunk and be loud and be rowdy.
And yell at the ghosts.
And yell at the ghosts and instigate, and it ruins it for everybody. And quite frankly, I like their policy of, you ruin someone's night, you're paying for their room, which I think is awesome. And there's places that are afraid that they're going to become like that if their information gets out there.
They want to be seen as a nice hotel, and I 100% respect that.
I as someone that's written about a lot of haunted hotels myself, you do get the hotel that, like, yes, we're haunted, but we don't want to go on the record because we don't want to scare away potential guests. And I'm kind of like, I work at a haunted inn, one of the more notorious haunted inns in New England, Conquer's Colonial Inn, and they embrace their ghosts, but they also embrace their history too. So it's one of those things that there's a fine line of respect. And I this is a plea out to people that visit these haunted hotels. Be respectful, like definitely pay, like go to the location and investigate, but do it in a way where you're not only respectful to the ghosts that you're talking to or interacting with, but also the other guests in the hotel. You're not the only one at these hotels.
And I think that's what a lot of people forget. It's not like the TV shows where we can just grab a location for a week and put together an hour-long TV show. People actively go places. They love the towns. They love where they're going, and they want to sleep, for crying out loud. You know, running around like me, setting out the 8-year-old and just letting her run up and down the hallways is really going to make a lot of people angry. Yeah, a lot of it is be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you two. It was great chatting with you. If people want to look at the journey that you took with Richard Estep, what's the name of the book? It's the Great American Ghost Tour.
Trip.
Ghost Trip.
Oh, Ghost Trip. And 10 Days with Richard Estep, and it's an amazing book, and I was really grateful to be a part of it. And you two are definitely stars, along with Sarah and other investigators on the team. So, and also looking forward to our journey together at the Hensdale House coming up. And I'm sure that we're going to be taking other journeys in the coming up year to locations. Hopefully, more out west, because I love Colorado and California and New Mexico. So I'd love to take a journey out there with you two.
Absolutely.
Come visit
Let's
us.
do it.
Yay. Well, thank you so much, Mike and Erin Taylor, for joining me on Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis, and we'll be back next week with Haunted Hotels. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.